Let's start by telling you that the Nigerian Senate has adjourned the quizzing of service chiefs over insecurity to February 13, 2024. This is to accommodate everyone involved in the management of security in the country. The security chiefs who were present at the Senate chamber were billed to address the lawmaker on rising insecurity in the country today, but the decision to widen the briefing forced Senate President Godswill Akpabio, while approving the adjournment, noted that the Senate would like a holistic deliberation on insecurity. The clerk of the Senate was subsequently directed to expand the invitees list to cover all service chiefs, that is the National Security Advisor, Finance Minister, Interior Minister, Defense Minister, the Minister of State for Defense, and the Minister of Police Affairs. And elsewhere, operatives of the Amotekun Corps have arrested 149 suspected criminals at different black spots within 3 local government areas of Ondo State. Commander of the Corps in the state, Chief Adetunji Adeleye, made the disclosure on Tuesday while parading the suspects before newsmen. He said the majority of the suspects claimed that they came into the state as hunters. He also said that the suspects were arrested where robbery and kidnapping usually occur in the local government areas. They surprisingly and carefully concealed and kept their weapons, bags of Indian hemp and cutlasses under their vehicles, and claimed they were coming from different parts of the country. The Amotekun boss said that after the conclusion of investigations, the suspects will be taken to the relevant government agencies for detailed profiling. Now, the Commissioner of Police, CP Abanewanda Surajuddin Olufemi, today assumed duty as the 22nd Commissioner of Police, Delta State Police Command. The new CP took over from AIG Wale Abbas, who was transferred to the police force headquarters in Abuja. CP Abanewanda hails from Ekpe local government area of Lagos State, born on February 22, 1966, to the family of Mr. and Mrs. M.A.R. Abanewanda. He was enlisted into the Nigeria Police Force as a member of Cadet ASP Course 17 on March 18, 1992. He was the immediate past Deputy Force Secretary at Force Headquarters in Abuja. He was also promoted to the rank of Commissioner of Police January 2024 and deployed to Delta State as the 22nd Commissioner of Police of Delta State Command. Let's also tell you that the abducted Deputy Vice Chancellor Administration of the Abia State University, Professor Godwin Emezue, has regained his freedom after spending 11 days in the kidnappers' den. The Abia State Police Command had confirmed that he was abducted in a filling station in Umuahia, the state capital, over 2 weeks ago. Emezue was said to have been released on Tuesday night by his abductors. A source close to the professor's family, newsmen, said that the kidnappers had earlier demanded a ransom of 35 million naira. The kidnappers had released footage of how they tortured the professor and threatened to kill him if the family failed to pay 20 million naira before the end of Saturday last week. The source said the professor is currently receiving medical attention in an undisclosed hospital due to torture. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of Nigeria is set to flag off the construction of 3,112 housing units in the Katsina area of the Federal Capital Territory. The groundbreaking exercise, scheduled for Thursday, is part of a public-private partnership project signed in December 2023 between the ministry and a consortium of companies for a total of 100,000 housing units nationwide. According to a statement by the Federal Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, the first phase of 20,000 housing units will be delivered in the Federal Capital Territory, out of which 3,112 units are to be constructed at the Katsina site. To this business-related story, the governor of Nigeria's Apex Bank, Olayemi Cardoso, says over $98 billion was spent on medical tourism, education and personal travels within the last 10 years, resulting in the stronger value for the dollar. Cardoso made this known as he appeared before members of the House of Representatives to give details on the worrisome decline of Nigeria's naira compared to the US dollar. Idong Joseph reports.
The governor of Nigeria's central bank, and the chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, joined the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Budget and National Planning to brief lawmakers on measures being taken to address the rising inflation in the country and the high cost of living being witnessed by citizens. While giving reasons for the volatile exchange rate currently being witnessed, the Apex Bank chief expressed worry over the surge in the demand for the dollar in the last 10 years, saying that between 2010 and 2020, over $28 billion was expended for foreign education, $11 billion on medical tourism, and over $58 billion on personal travel allowance, amongst others.
Between spending on medical and education in overseas countries, the amount spent, which was estimated at about $40 billion US, was equivalent to our reserves. And that's shocking, to be quite honest. That is very shocking. And I think these are things that we all need to just take a look and think about how we can benefit and strengthen the Naira from having more local production and using the local alternatives that we may have. So that is a wake-up call, as far as I can see. It's a wake-up call.
He says that the substantial demand for these and other similar services abroad will continue to put the exchange rates under pressure, calling for an attitudinal change to start patronizing made-in-Nigeria goods and services. Other officials present said that there are measures already being put in place to help resolve the challenges facing citizens.
There are compensatory mechanisms. One of it is to support domestic production, particularly one that we are most familiar with, 36 states of Nigeria plus FCT. Agricultural production is a major component, and as well as other activities for which infrastructure, for which funding has been generously provided in the budget.
When you look at inflation, a large element is food inflation. In fact, food inflation accounts for 33% of the consumer price index. So when you attack food production, raise food production, you bring down the price of food, you bring down inflation, you get a chance to bring down interest rates, and there lies the road to investment.
Members of the nation's finance and economic team expressing confidence on strategies being taken to address the current challenges in the country. Lawmakers are, however, urging them to urgently come up with clearly visible results. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idong Joseph.
Many thanks for staying with us. Let's now talk health. The Nigerian government has begun enforcing the ban on the importation, manufacture, distribution, sale, and use of alcoholic beverages in sachets, PET bottles, and glass bottles of 200 millimeters and below. The National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control recently said the deadline given to manufacturers of the mentioned products to cease production in sachets and PET bottles elapsed on January 31, 2024. Bettina Nwelih has more.
Come on, Bandel. Sorry, I'm a general. I tell you, certainly, Conjo Consanwa, Conja Kawamole, Jabache Maleje, or Tiano Nanta, Taviramon school, or Tiano Nanta, Lavi Somo Le, Conjo to the law, come off of your power, Consanwa, Conjo.
To ẹ pé àwọn tó ń ṣiṣẹ́ bíríkìlà tó ẹ pé labour náà ń ṣe tó ẹ pé wọ́n gba 3,000 lójúmọ́ tó ẹ pé wọ́n dẹ̀ ń ṣe fàájì tó ẹ pé kàn lọ́wọ́ ra bíẹ̀ kàn rówó ra nǹkan kan tó ẹ pé sachet yẹn tó bá lè mú òun ló máa benefit wọn báwọn náà fẹ́ fowó ra bíẹ̀ èèlò náà fẹ́ fi ra bíẹ̀ nínú 3,000 ẹ jọ̀ọ́ nǹkan tèmi kàn fẹ́ sọ ni pé ẹ jọ̀ọ́ ẹ má jẹ́ ká bà Nàìjíríà jẹ́ Nigeria is molest.
Bí mo ṣe wà mí ò gbẹ̀yìnbó ṣùgbọ́n ògógóró ó ṣiṣẹ́ fún stroke èyàn ò lè máa mú para ní ṣùgbọ́n o gbọ́dọ̀ mú díẹ̀ bó jẹ́ sásẹ̀tì kan ni wàá mú á fi ṣiṣẹ́ ra rẹ̀ ṣùgbọ́n tó bá máa mú para yẹn òun ni ò dáa so eléyìí tí wọ́n sọ pé kán máa báńdì ògóró yẹn àbí pé kán máa mú yẹn kò jọ o ẹ má lọ tanra yín o.
According to the World Health Organization, it has been established that children who drink alcohol are more likely to use drugs, get bad grades, suffer injury or death, engage in risky sexual activity, make bad decisions, and have health problems. Also, it is stated that harmful consumption of alcohol is linked to more than 200 health conditions, including infectious diseases and non-communicable conditions.
This enforcement was done simultaneously at the same time in various cities across the country. Meanwhile, many products at the manufacturing facilities in various cities such as Jos, Enugu, Ibadan, Lagos, and Ota were evacuated, and others put on hold due to sheer volume and size that we could not evacuate, but all awaiting destruction.
In November 2023, the Lagos state government took steps to evacuate illegal stalls selling these sachet alcoholic drinks to children who attend Silver Spring Schools, Abaronje Road, Ikotun. The State Commissioner for Environment and Water Resources, Tokumbo Wahab, in a post made via his X handle, had given the directive and urged the school principal to take over the school's setback.
This sachet alcohol and PET bottle alcohol are hawked on the streets. Anybody can literally buy them, including children, underage groups, and vulnerable groups. And this makes it even more scary and deadly. In children, we have the problem of nutritional deficiency. It's a major concern, and also weakened immune system. Also, there's a risk of addiction and growing up to be unhealthy individuals and chronic alcoholics. Now, for general side effects of taking alcohol, it includes liver damage, kidney damage, mental health issues.
It is clear how the concerns go beyond the economic implications that affect manufacturers and sellers. The improper disposal of these used sachets has contributed to environmental as well as health hazards for society.
These sachets are ones that do not biodegrade. In fact, it takes about 400 years thereabouts. And because of the way we dispose them, they mostly even just break down and turn to microplastics. So you find them in our food chains, which is poisonous to us, right? I support the ban, majorly because of the environmental impact. And then for the consumers, so yes, I know that because of the economic situation again, that was like a go-to for a number of people who couldn't afford the bottles and stuff. But it is just what it is. We have to trade because it has very huge environmental impact. And it brings me back to even the first question about how we don't talk enough about the environmental impact some of these things have.
While there may be grievances among affected parties, it is important to note that the ban had been agreed upon by a multi-agency committee in 2018, outlining a gradual reduction in production before the complete phase-out in 2024. In Lagos, for News Central, Bettina Nwelih.
Joining me on the news to discuss this is the Director, Investigation and Enforcement Directorate, NAFDAC, Francis Ononiwu. Thank you so much for joining us on the news.
Thank you for having me.
Now, NAFDAC said that the move was to help reduce the menace of alcohol abuse in the nation, especially among the youth, but that would definitely grossly affect the business side of things for the producers that have invested in the market. You just watched our reports where some people said that that's how they raise the finance for household spending. Some people say that's how they live happy, while others have said, oh, it could reduce stroke. We understand. So couldn't there have been a better policy on regulating consumption in the country and reducing its attendant effect than this?
If you say there are better ways, there is no better way than what has just happened. Because the agency, that's the National Agency for Food and Drugs Administration and Control, you can see that word, control. We, aside from regulating the products under us, we also control it. That means we also control the way it is sold and whether it should be sold or not. So that is part of the activities of NAFDAC. So coming to better ways of doing business, this is not food, this is alcohol. And the alcohol can also be classified as medicine, as drug, but not the kind of drug that somebody said about curing stroke. No, it's a stimulant. I mean, it affects the central nervous system. Alcohol affects the central nervous system. So it is not just like any other food. So you cannot say that it be regulation. It has to be regulated because we have to consider the larger population that it will affect. So because we are talking about the negative effect of these products being consumed.
Yes, we'll talk about the negative effects, but let's still dwell on the issue of control, management, and having to monitor the consumption and distribution of these. Now, if you say that is what NAFDAC is all about, would you also be raiding clubs, parties, where every day these consumables, these alcoholic beverages are consumed? Thousands of monies are being spent. In some areas, millions are being spent every day at clubs for the purchase and the consumption of this alcoholic drink. So are you going to be extending your raid to these areas also, when, of course, we're talking about control and monitoring?
It's all aspects of because we control not only the manufacture, we control the manufacturing, the distribution, the sale and use of the products. So all the chains from manufacturing to use, we control. So if you talk of nightclubs, of course, we do visit nightclubs to regulate it. But when you talk about this aspect of the ban, they are not looking. I mean, the people that are not in support of it are looking at it from the business point of view. But is it the business at the expense of the health hazard it has on the population, especially the vulnerable, the young ones, the youths, the school children, primary school, secondary school, the health implication? So, and the ban we are talking about the ban is not for all classes of alcoholic drinks. We are talking of pack sizes, the sizes that are mostly abused by the vulnerable group. So that is the one that is banned. So it's just 200 mils and below, and sachets. Those are the ones that are banned.
So I'd like to quickly find out from you. I'd like to just quickly find out from you in about a month. I don't know if you can just do a rough estimate for me in about a month. When it comes to consumption of these alcoholic beverages in large quantities, those who spend more or pay more to consume or to purchase these drinks in large quantities, would you say that the consumption rate is lower than those who buy these sachets or the ones in PET bottles? Because from what you're saying, you consider these purchase of these smaller quantities as more detrimental to the health of people than those who spend thousands and millions to purchase them.
No. Our major concern are the vulnerable group, the children. So, and they are the ones that use these small volumes because these small volumes are pocket friendly. They can easily be put in pockets, in bags, in areas that you will not know that they are going about with these drinks. And that's why they could easily smuggle it into their classroom, into the school compound, and drink without being seen. Because if you carry the higher volumes, it will be difficult for you to hide it, especially the vulnerable groups. Those are the best people that we are trying to protect.
But these companies, Mr. Francis,
enough to take alcohol should not take.
But these companies were actually granted approval to produce these alcoholic beverages before now. So shouldn't have NAFDAC at some point before now put the possible eventual outcome into consideration before initially giving them the go-ahead?
We gave, it was registered, no doubt about that. They were registered, those pack sizes were registered. But also, we gave them timeline. We gave them time because this thing has started in 2018. That was when we started discussing with the manufacturers that this thing is going to be phased out. And it was actually an understanding between the Federal Ministry of Health, the regulatory agencies, NAFDAC, Federal Competition and Protection Commission, and also even the stakeholders, the manufacturers. They were part of the meeting where this thing was decided, and they agreed with us in all the steps we have taken. We gave them a window period, and we gave them a window period of 5 years within which they are supposed to phase out those pack sizes. And the window period elapsed on the 31st of January 2024. So the process of withdrawal and stoppage was not unilaterally taken by NAFDAC. It was a joint decision, even with the stakeholders, that is the manufacturers, and they were given that window period, which elapsed. So it is they were given time. They are giving time.
So now that members of the Distillers and Blenders Association of Nigeria have started protesting about this ban, because they came out to say that about 45,000 jobs or 45,000 of jobs would be lost, and billions of naira would also be lost in investments as a result of this ban. So is there going to be a rapport? Is there going to be a talk? Is there going to be probably a compromise or a discussion to be held to further see how to fine-tune this, so that those who have actually invested into this business can, in a way, not suffer a loss?
My brother, let me tell you one thing. For NAFDAC, when it comes to the issue of safeguarding the health of the nation, we don't compromise. And there's no shortcut to that. We don't consider business, we don't consider investment when it comes to the health of the nation.
But you approved. You approved. You approved. You gave approval.
We approved, but the time of the time frame we gave them to phase out has elapsed. And they also have the other pack sizes to cope with. They can produce the other pack sizes. They were not banned. So why are they particular with these words? The other pack size, the larger pack sizes, they can still produce. So they cannot say that their investment has been stopped. So that is how it is.
Thank you very much.
We also carried them along in the process. It wasn't like a unilaterally took decision. It was decision taken jointly with them.
Mr. Francis Ononiwu, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
But I'll tell you that Mali has reaffirmed its exit without delay from West African bloc ECOWAS. Mali said it was not bound by the organization's one-year time frame for withdrawal. Bamako's military government announced its withdrawal from ECOWAS on January 28, along with neighboring Burkina Faso and Niger. But Article 91 of the bloc's treaty stipulates that member countries remain bound by their obligations for a period of 1 year after notifying their withdrawal. The letter said ECOWAS rendered the treaty inoperative when it failed to meet its obligations by closing member states' borders with Mali in 2022, denying it access to the sea. We also understand that mobile internet access has been restored in Senegal's capital, Dakar, 2 days after authorities cut access as the country grapples with its worst political crisis in decades. Access to mobile data had been blocked since early Monday, with the Telecommunications Ministry citing the dissemination of hateful and subversive messages on social media. Lawmakers on the same day voted to delay this month's presidential poll until December 15, extending the term of outgoing President Macky Sall. In the meantime, 3 opposition Senegalese members of parliament have been arrested in the fallout from Parliament's decision to postpone the presidential election by 10 months. The spokesperson for dissolved opposition party, PASTEF, El Malik Ndiaye, told newsmen that the 3 lawmakers from the opposition coalition, Yewi Askanwi, were arrested on Tuesday. On Monday, lawmakers approved a last-minute amendment to hold the vote in December, extending President Macky Sall's mandate. Most opposition members of parliament had been forcibly removed from the chamber after heated debates. The delay has also sparked widespread protests and international concern about Senegal's democracy, among the most stable in the region. Let's now head to the continent's north, where an Egyptian court has handed a prison term to opposition politician Ahmed Al-Tantawi, who had hoped to run against President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi last year. Al-Tantawi, who withdrew his candidacy before the December votes, citing harassment and obstruction, was found guilty of election campaign irregularities. He was handed a 1-year jail term that could be suspended on bail of about $647. The opposition politician was also barred from running in parliamentary elections for 5 years, and a ruling by the Mataria Misdemeanor Court. The opposition politician had accused authorities of hampering his efforts to collect endorsements required to run under various pretexts, including computer malfunctions. Now, the families of 14 Tunisian migrants who went missing in the Mediterranean Sea last month protested in the capital, Tunis, on Tuesday, seeking answers from authorities. The group of mostly teenagers from El Hancha, a small town in central Tunisia, had left from the coastal city of Sfax, hoping to reach the Italian island of Lampedusa, some 150 kilometers away. Sfax is one of the main departure points for irregular migrants. Tunisia's economy is at a near standstill, with a 1.2% growth rate estimated by the World Bank in 2023, while youth unemployment stands at around 38%. According to the Italian Interior Ministry, Tunisian illegal arrivals in Italy last year formed the second largest contingent behind Guineans at 17,304.
ويطمنا على حكايه اولادنا نخافوا لا تجرى لنا كارثه كما صارت في جرجيس والا الكارثه الاخرى كما صارت نهار 9 مارس 2011 اللي معاهم خو صاحبتي اللي كان من هكا عملوا وقفه احتجاجيه وكل شيء ومن بعد تالي تنساو للحظه هذه ما عندهم حتى معلوم.
At least 14 soldiers have died in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and 500 others have been affected by a cholera outbreak in southeastern Haut-Katanga province. Gen Eddie Kabend, commander of the 22nd Military Region, Mura Military Training Center, confirmed the deaths on Tuesday during a meeting with a delegation from the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, office in Lubumbashi. Gen Kabend told newsmen that 72 hours ago, the number of patients receiving treatment had risen to exactly 144 and have recorded 14 deaths and also saved many patients who have returned to their ranks. He said that the outbreak was caused by unsanitary conditions at the military camp. In July 2023, a cholera outbreak in Kalemi in neighboring Tanganyika province left at least 10 people dead. Snowstorms and freezing rain have disrupted transportation in large parts of China as millions of people travel for the Lunar New Year holiday. Hundreds of flights and train services have been cancelled, while motorists have been stranded on frozen highways for days. Authorities expect 480 million trips to be made for the Lunar New Year, also known as the Spring Festival. The holiday sets off the largest annual human migration as millions in China travel to their hometowns, but many say the cold has spoiled their plans to reunite with their families. China's Meteorological Service has warned of the worst winter weather since 2008. The country's central region, including provinces like Hebei and Anhui, have borne the brunt of the freezing conditions. And at this point, joining us to give more insight into this is our international correspondent, Afia Hagen. So, Afia, can you tell us more? What exactly is the Lunar New Year and how important is it for the Chinese national?
Well, the Lunar New Year, which is also known as the Spring Festival, it celebrates the second new moon after the winter solstice. And the winter solstice occurs on the 21st of December. And so the second new moon occurs between the 21st of January and the 20th of February. And so this year, Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year, falls on Saturday, the 10th of February. So there's huge celebrations. People let off fireworks and firecrackers, go and see their families, decorate their houses with red for good luck, and people give each other money in red envelopes to celebrate the season. So it's basically a huge, huge holiday, kind of like our Christmas and New Year. That's how the Chinese celebrate it with Lunar New Year.
So we see that the snowstorm rather, and the freezing rain would be adversely impacting hundreds of flights and train services, with over 480 million trips to be affected. So why is it that at this time the snowstorm is having such a huge impact?
Well, there's a few different factors. First of all, it's the worst storm that China has had in a decade or more, but also because Chinese New Year is back, as it were. This is the biggest celebration of Chinese New Year since the pandemic took hold in 2020. In 2021, there was still quite strict COVID-19 measures in place, and even some of those measures were in place in 2022. Now, in 2023, yes, people were traveling, but not as much as they anticipated doing this year in 2024. So all those factors, this really, really severe storm, which has had 225 cities, have seen days where their daily average temperature is well below 0 degrees. You've got 100 highways blocked, you've got 4,000 vehicles stuck in the road. If you combine this terrible weather with this huge migration event where the numbers have been up for the first time since, pre-COVID, what you have, excuse the pun, is a perfect storm.
So let's look at the business side of things. Now, what could be the impact of the snowstorm on the economy across China and the rest of the world?
Well, during this Chinese New Year period, businesses do slow down, probably for about a month, to be honest. And there's a particular week that every single Chinese person who is employed actually gets that week off as standard. So as you know, like we said, you have nearly 3 billion trips expected to be made across China by train, by bus, by car, however people travel to see their relatives. But it's also a really big time for people to travel abroad. And as we know, the Chinese economy has been picking up in recent decades, and Chinese people are huge consumers of designer and global brands. So they love to travel abroad and love to do their shopping, as it were, in different cities across the world. London is a hugely popular destination, as are various cities across Europe. Now, if flights are cancelled, if people can't travel, that will have an effect on these global brands that kind of rely on this huge migration event to give their businesses a boost, especially, in January and February when things are traditionally quite quiet. So even though you will have a slowdown in the Chinese economy anyway, because of the shutdown, because of the holiday, it usually gives a boost worldwide. And if people can't travel, then that will create problems.
So finally, China has said that it is the worst winter since 2008. Now, is there any inclination as to how long these will persist, most especially for those who may still want to travel, whether or not they miss the Lunar Year celebration?
Well, the freezing conditions are actually supposed to lift by the end of today. That's temperatures going above 0 degrees. The problem now is if you've got 4,000 cars stuck on highways, if you've got bridges closed and highways closed, it's about plowing away snow. It's about getting rid of cars that are stuck on highways. Sometimes when you have a lot of snow accumulated, that can lead to flooding. So we're now looking at the aftermath of this severe weather. Just because the weather clears doesn't mean that it still isn't going to impact people's travel plans. You've got lots of trains in the wrong places because they have been stuck as well, planes where they shouldn't be as well. So it's going to be a few days before China can really, really get back on its feet and before people can really start traveling as they would want to. So it's kind of a race against time to celebrate Lunar New Year.
All right. Ife Hagan, thank you so much for talking to us. A bit of business now. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa says black ownership in the mining sector has reached 39%, amounting to an estimated 640 billion rand. However, Duma Gubule, an expert and research associate at the Social Policy Initiative, contests these figures, stating that black ownership is actually 5.4%. This debate stems off the transformation within the industry since 2004, when black ownership stood at a mere 2%, as outlined in South Africa's mining charter. President Ramaphosa highlighted these changes in his opening address at the Investing in African Mining Indaba in Cape Town, attended by nearly 10,000 participants. Despite the disputes, mining remains a pivotal economic contributor, accounting for about 60% of South African exports by value. The contrasting perspectives underscore ongoing discussions about the true extent of transformation in the nation's mining sector. And now joining me to discuss this, I have Duma Gubule, who is the Research Associate Social Policy Initiative, and he will be talking further on this. Thank you so much for joining us on the news.
Thank you so much for the invite.
Now, the mining indaba enters its 30th anniversary this year. What is your assessment of its achievements in the last 3 decades?
Well, the mining indaba is one of the premier destinations for the global mining industry. And so executives come here every year to discuss, latest trends in the mining industry. And obviously, South Africa is a major player in the mining industry. Traditionally, we're a big producer of gold, the largest in the world, and diamonds. But the composition over the last 30 years of South Africa's mining industry has transformed significantly. We are no longer a major gold producer or international gold producer or a major diamond producer. So the largest commodities at the moment is platinum, number one, where we have the largest platinum production in the world, coal, iron ore, and also coal, iron ore, and gold. Yeah, so sorry, those are the top 4. And then you also have chrome, manganese, and diamonds at the other side of it. So it's still a large industry. It employs about 500,000 people. It also contributes about 6% to South Africa's GDP. However, it is going through a difficult time at the moment. We have had unprecedented power cuts in South Africa. Last year was the worst year in South African history in terms of power cuts. We had about 7,000 hours of power cuts throughout the year. The second issue is that there's been a collapse of our state-owned transport company called Transnet. And it was a sudden collapse over the last 2 years.
Okay.
And miners are struggling to send out exports to our export markets because of the problems in terms of our transport logistics system.
Okay, so you disagreed with President Ramaphosa as regards the black ownership percentage of the mining sector. So can you provide specific evidence or probably data to support your claim that the black ownership in the South African mining sector is 5.4% rather than what was reported by President Ramaphosa, that is 39%?
Okay, first of all, I just have to say, South Africa came from apartheid history where black people, there was no ownership by black people. So the government put in place what is called Black Economic Empowerment Policies, and they had a mining charter, an agreement with the mining industry that they would transfer 25% to black ownership. So the problem is that there's a number of the way they calculate it is it's actually, I don't know, they found a way to game the system and they bullied the government into accepting certain principles. But I measure actual ownership by black people in the country. So the largest black ownership is by Patrice Motsepe, African Rainbow Minerals, which is a diversified mining company. He's the president of the Confederation of African Football, and that's number one. So he's diversified mining producer. Number two is a company called Exxaro, which is a coal producer where there's about 20% black ownership. So I've documented all the top 15 companies on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. They have got a market capitalization in dollars of more than 80 billion rands. Those mining companies, $80 billion, sorry. And so I've looked at every single one of those top 15 companies on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and the actual black ownership is about 5.4%. Now, there's one large coal company, black owned, which is not on the stock exchange, but I do not know. I've talked to them. I do not know the exact value of the company because it's unlisted. So that is a large one. So it could be slightly above 5.4%, probably around 6.4 to 7% if you include that large owned company.
So now, is there a need to improve or increase the number of black ownership of the sector? If that is done or canvassed for, would it improve the quality of the sector? Would it improve in terms of its contribution to the country's economic growth?
Well, the problem is that South Africa is the most unequal country in the world. We've got these racial inequalities. And I mean, the government, but the government has backtracked from these racial policies, from the transformation policies under the Ramaphosa administration. basically nothing has happened in terms of transformation policies under the Ramaphosa, which is strange because he made a lot of his fortune in the mining industry and the banking industry because of transformation policies. But he has actually said nothing. And the mines and the banks have bullied the government into backtracking in terms of their commitments to transform these industries.
All right. Thank you so much, Duma Gubule, for talking to us.
Thank you.